Can I ask you something? What do Assassin's Creed, Need for Speed, and Uncharted have in common? They are all games and they all have really bad movie adaptations, according to the critics. But the question is why? You see, these examples that I named are just the beginning of how many games got a bad movie adaptation. There are so many games that have this problem that it became a phenomenon called the video game movie curse. And today I am going to explain it to you, and with the Five Nights at Freddy's movie on its way to theaters, we will try to predict will that movie be a victim of the video game curse as its colleagues. First, let's start with the video game movie curse itself. Basically, when a movie studio decides to partner up with some game studio or vice versa to make a movie based on a video game, it often doesn't go so well. Is there an answer to why this happens? Well, there are a few answers to this, but first I need to remind you to cast your tomato on that subscribe button. The first motive to do bad video game movies is taxes, but I don't want to make this too complicated. Basically, in Germany there was a law that said if you invest money into filmmaking, the government doesn't tax you, but they will tax only the money that you make back with that movie. And that left a big loophole in the law, with the opportunity to make bad movies fast and keep the movie budget. So how do you do that? Well, you just buy a license to use a video game story, and you rewrite a story here and there, and if the movie is bad, that's even better for you. And you have yourself a money-making machine that explains the bad video game movies in the early 2000s. But after that, the German law about movie budget was changed. So what's stopping studios now from making a good video game movie? Well, the next big thing is that video game movies will never have the magic that original games had. Picture this. If we get, for example, the movie adaptation of GTA San Andreas, it would be a total fail. But how am I so sure? Well, first, will you watch the GTA San Andreas if the CJ sounded different? I don't think so. You see how just little things can make a huge difference. And now imagine how much studios have to be careful when making a movie adaptation of video games. And the thing that follows this is how you make an interesting movie based on an amazing story that almost everybody knows. Well, the answer to this is you don't. You change a few things here and there, but then it's not special anymore. It feels more like some spin-off of the original game. The Uncharted is a really good example for this. We who played the Uncharted know how it feels to experience those stories along with Nathan and Sully, but when you see the movie, it just doesn't feel the same. And it's not necessarily the movie's fault. Like, I really like the Tom Holland performance as Nathan, and Mark Wahlberg's performance isn't that bad, but my opinion is that it is more fault on bad writing than on the Mark himself for his average performance as Sully. And we came to another thing that makes video game movies curse: the bad writing. I mentioned my buddy Mark Wahlberg with his average performance as Sully, but as I said, it is not his fault. He didn't get Sully right because Sully was written so badly. The Sully in the game and the Sully in the movie are two different worlds. Sully in the game was a sarcastic character with experience and rich history, and more importantly, he was the father figure to Nate. In the movie, every second it feels like Sully is going to betray Nate from the moment they met, and at the end, when he doesn't do it, there is no clear reason why he didn't betray him. Next thing helping the video game movie curse is that video games are not meant to be movies. Simple, but still, let me explain. When you are creating the game, your main focus should be mechanics, graphics, and so on, and you will not focus so much on story. And that's why video game stories are often simple. But why are games so popular then? Well, it is because you have an impact on that story and you complete that simple story. That's the best part about video games. And we are all different, so we will have different play styles, and that lets us all enjoy the game in our own way. But film isn't that interactive, and when you strip away your ability to influence the story of the game, then you just get a simple story which is not good for a movie, and combine that with bad writing and you get a real disaster. Now the most interesting question: will Five Nights at Freddy's be another victim of a video game movie curse? And let me tell you something, the answer to this isn't simple. When you are making a movie in a franchise that has existed for almost 10 years, you have a ton of material to work with. And Five Nights at Freddy's is a franchise that not only has games, but also books, a ton of books. But the main thing about this franchise is that its lore is still a mystery, which makes this game a lot more fun to play. With so many stories both in books and games, it will be interesting to see what the movie will tell. To see if our Freddy is going to be just another flop in the row, we need to understand what can go wrong when making a movie about this franchise. And another thing that I didn't mention, but you probably already know this, Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game, which makes this movie a horror movie, and that means that it needs to stay true to franchise and be scary, so the stakes are high, especially when you consider that we were waiting so long to see this movie. But let's see first what makes Five Nights at Freddy's so special. As I said, the lore of this game is not clear. We have hints hints through the games and books what it could be, but we aren't sure, and this gives this movie so much opportunity to be good, but also so much opportunity to be bad, because movie stories are often understood by everybody till the end, and if you want to stay true to his franchise, you cannot make everything so clear like the movies do. Before we continue talking about the movie, let's see the studio that is behind this movie, Universal Studio. We need to see if they have a record of creating video game movies, and you might want to have a seat for this one. The Universal Pictures made Street Fighter, Doom, and Warcraft, 3 legendary franchises as this one, and still none of these movies didn't got even 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a big failure for a studio like Universal. But maybe this time they learned from their mistakes, and they are ready to give the world a worthy video game movie. I wouldn't bet on that, but there is a catch. You see, Five Nights at Freddy's, when it launched, it was a small indie horror game created by one guy, Scott Cawthon. And even if you never played any of Five Nights at Freddy's games, you can see by the number of YouTube videos theorizing about this game that Scott knew what he was doing, and I don't think you will let that be ruined because of a quick cash grab. But still, it depends on how much he will influence the making of this movie. We cannot predict that, but what we can do is see our other reason why video game movie curse is actually a thing. We said that taxes are the reason why studios make bad video game movies, but since German law changed, this is no longer possible. But what with the things that still can go wrong? You see, I don't think that Five Nights at Freddy's will be a victim of bad story writing. If the writers of this movie just have played one Five Nights at Freddy's game, or at least watched one video game theory on this game, they can make a good story. But still, this is a big question. And another thing is that the story in the Five Nights at Freddy's is a lot better than the game mechanics, which is very important to the movie. And combine that with the more than years of content, yeah, it will be pretty hard for them to mess up with the story. Let's just hope they do their job right. And also, one more thing on the story. Five Nights at Freddy's has so much content that it is hard to predict what will be included in the movie and what won't. You see, as we said, it's hard to make an interesting movie based on already known story. But the twist with this franchise is that its official story is not known, and there are so many stories. We can be sure that this movie will include the story of the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, but as I said, even the original story is not clear. This leaves the movie writers a lot of room to implement something new, and still stay true to the franchise. Now we have the trailers for the movie. What can we predict from them? Well, as I already said, this movie will follow a Five Nights at Freddy's 1 story, but it will also use other content of this franchise to complete a movie. After all of this, will the Five Nights at Freddy's be cursed with video game movie curse? Well, it depends, mostly on the writers of the movie. If they fail, the whole movie is going down. I hope they will get it right. And with this, we complete this theme. If you forgot at the beginning of the video, now it's your chance to hit the subscribe button with the tomato. And also, don't forget to follow me on my social media, where you will be greeted with more of me. Thank you for watching the whole episode, and this theme is over. Till next week, see ya.